a network interface is created, and to this network interface a public and private IP address is assigned to it. But it depends. If you run it on public subnet, then you will have a public IP address. If you run it in a private subnet, you will have only a private IP address. And how you can do that is, you still remember that once we launch a subnet, we come to it, then and we check the subnet, the public subnets. Then I have click on modify auto assign IP address settings. That means that in this tell to AWS that this subnets that have this feature enabled, please enable the public IP address on them. If it is not enabled, then the AWS will not give you an public IP address for that instance that is in that subnet. The case is for the private subnet. We have not enabled that feature on them. Then, right, and then the same thing, yes, we assume that we created here in this public subnet, right? And then public IP address, for example, you can write whatever public IP address you want. For example, I don't know what I'm writing, but whatever the IP address, just I want to illustrate and explain you what's going on. And here we have a private subnet 10.10.0 or 2.0 slash. Now, right, there is, so another thing here is that the elastic network interface must be in the same availability zone as the instance that you want to attach this network interface to. It is not allowed to remap. For example, if we have, let me expand this a little bit. It is not allowed to, for example, I will take this instance. Yes, and for example, if we have an interface here, it is not allowed to attach this so that is not allowed to assign a network interface for an instance that is not in the same availability zone as the EC2 instance. If you want to assign a new or to attach a new network interface for EC2 instance, it must be in a subnet or in the same availability zone as your EC2 instance that you want to attach to it. Then once you attach a new network interface, by default AWS will give it a public IP address if it is in the public subnet, and a private network. But the problem here with public address is once you stop your EC2 instance and you start it again, then AWS will regenerate a new public IP address for your EC2 instance. But what, for example, let me route this Amazon route. But what, for example, if you bought a domain and you have created a subdomain for your EC2 instance, then point point your domain name to this public IP address. So if this EC2 instance, sorry, for example, you have assigned it to it. If you point your domain, let me give you example. For example, a domain name is this one. If you don't know what is the domain name, is this one. For example, here it is this one, it is the domain, and this one it is the subdomain, and this one is the subdomain, right? Google.com is the domain, and gmail.google.com is subdomain. From a domain you can create subdomains, and that subdomains point on a public IP address. I hope that is clear for you. If you don't know what is it, you can come back to my previous videos and check that. And if you didn't understand, you can let me know in the comments. I will create a video and explain it more about that. So, for example, if you point your domain on this EC2 instance, means on this public IP address. So if this EC2 instance is crashed or break it down, then when you launch it, you will have another public IP address. So if you're, for example, if your domain is, for example, antlali.com, then you have created a subdomain, for example, a subdomain. This is a subdomain, www, it is a subdomain, right? That's point to this public IP address. Then once this EC2 instance stop it and start it again, you will lose the public IP address. So then you have to go to the EC2 instance, then look for the IP address, then go to your Amazon route 53, then recreate the subdomain and point it to that IP address. So it will be very boring to do that every time. For that, AWS come with another option, is elastic IP address. So the difference between the elastic IP address and the public IP address is that the elastic IP address is static and the public IP address is dynamic. The static means that once you have that public address, that IP address, it will be not changed. It will be yours, and you will be in the charge to pay for it because you have bought it. It is for your EC2 instance, and no one will take it from you, and until you release it. So the difference between elastic IP address and public IP address, that elastic IP address is static, means once you have it, even if you're easy and you attach it to your network interface, and that network interface attached to your Amazon EC2 instance, that IP address will be not changed even if you stop your EC2 instance and you start it again, because it is static, right? I will show you a demo how you can do that manually. I have only covered the theory behind that, but now let me jump and show you what is going on when we try to implement that. Right? So two things you have to remember very well. If you want to launch a new network interface for your EC2 instance, that network interface must reside in the same available